Well, UCLA football has reached the stage of their season where it's make or break time. If they're to make the Rose Bowl and, well, reach those lofty expectations they've set for themselves this year, the next three games, 4 weeks in total, will truly make or break this UCLA season, even more than the SC game. Let's talk about it on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's your favorite host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer on Locked On UCLA. You can follow me at ZachAndYox on Twitter, or you can go to the show Twitter at Locked On Bruins. And most importantly, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube at Locked On UCLA. Subscribe to the show. Keep growing it. I appreciate you guys at Locked On UCLA. It's free wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. It's for free. And on YouTube, you can watch the show. I know you guys are giving me for YouTube, you guys give me some slack for no gear. So UCLA Bruins sweater with UCLA t-shirt that says virtual blew out for the UCLA SC basketball game. So no need for the crap. I got stuff. I just wear whatever sometimes. You record a lot of podcasts. You don't even remember what you wear half the time. So here we go. Locked On UCLA. Again, let's remind you that this episode is brought to you by Upside. You can get $5 cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more when you use Upside when you buy gas or groceries. So go check it out. What I was telling you guys about when it comes to these next 4 weeks, it's obvious these are key matchups, even more important than, say, it was looking at it in the beginning of the season. When you looked at it preseason, Washington's come out and they're 4-0. They're ranked in the top 15, top 18 in the country. Oregon is still top 12, top 15 in the country. Utah is still importantly top 12 in the country, close to top 10, and beyond the fact that, the crosstown school is slowly working their way up the top 10. We just have to mention that there's four teams in the Pac-12 that are in the top 15 in the AP Top 25 poll. And for some reason, UCLA 4-0, yes, you can look at the schedule, you can look at their performances, not too much love in the polls, which is why we need you to give you some love. Bruin fans, get those 8 claps ready. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA, fight, fight, fights! These next 3 weeks will make or break UCLA's season. What are the 3 challenges UCLA is going to face with these opponents? First, starting this week, Friday night against Washington, who comes in at 15th in the nation. We're going to go bit by bit. First, Washington, what UCLA is going to get challenged by. Then what the Oregon game brings. The Utah game. And then what finally, the Oregon game, the final part of this 3-game brutal stretch for the Bruins, where it's all ranked opponents from here on out, at least if the other teams take care of business. But first, Washington, UCLA, a pair of 4-0 teams this week. This is where UCLA, it's got to be a must-win if you're thinking about making the Rose Bowl. You have to pick off 2 of these next 3 at the worst. If you take all 3, dream run begins. We're all excited. But minimum, to reach the crazy goals, I'm thinking minimum 2 out of 3. And this is a Washington game at home against a Husky team that, surprisingly enough, we talk about UCLA's endless home games. It's Washington who's played their first 4 all at home against some subpar competition, some big names, but maybe some names that aren't exactly as good as one may have thought. So the Huskies 4-0, beating a Kent State team that, yes, did challenge Georgia recently, even more than Oregon did in their game, but a Kent State team that's 1-3, losing all 3 games in paycheck games to Georgia, Oklahoma, and Washington. So they beat Kent State in their opener, did Washington put up big points, beat Portland State, an FCS opponent, blew them out at home, then dominated a Michigan State team that came in undefeated, ranked in week 3 in front of a packed house in Seattle. And then that Michigan State team, good old Sparty, went back home to East Lansing and lost at home to Minnesota 34-7. So maybe the hype train riding a little too hard on Sparty for Michigan. And then Stanford, Washington went in there and at home, blew them out 40-22. So the biggest challenge first for UCLA is they're facing a Husky team that's averaging 44 points per game in their 4 games so far. They've outscored teams 176-76, plus a 100-point differential. They haven't had a close game. They're averaging almost over 530 yards per game, and they've only turned over the ball twice. I've seen maybe a lost fumble and 1 interception thrown in the first few weeks. I've already mentioned this. Michael Penix Jr., the Indiana transfer, is the nation's leader in passing yards from what I've seen. So this is a guy and a team with their new head coach that's quickly rejuvenated this program in Kalen DeBoer. You bring in, with the transfer portal, you bring in some key pieces, and you can all of a sudden, boom, electrify a, a new lineup, a new school. I just get it. This is what Kalen DeBoer did immediately at Fresno State when he took over for the Bulldogs out in Fresno. Had Jake Haener, ironically enough, who came from Washington, and that's what he did at Fresno State. Got them rocking, got this job, and Washington is firing in all cylinders. So the first thing for UCLA, most importantly, this will be a test of the defense. This is their true first test defensively for UCLA. I know there's been pieces of what UCLA's done, especially in second halves of games. UCLA, week 1 of this 4-week stretch over 3 games, this is a true test of the defense. We've seen UCLA's offense. They've run the ball. They've thrown the ball. Maybe not as electrifying, despite the numbers still being rather gaudy for UCLA's offense. But this game will most likely come down to UCLA's defense. And can they slow down the Washington attack? Not exactly stop them, but can they slow them down and bend but not break? That is important for UCLA against Washington. And another test for UCLA, and talking about Rose Bowl hopes and the fate of the Rose Bowl, what about the Rose Bowl Stadium itself? Will we get a crowd this weekend? We need everybody to stand up. And I'm looking at those secondary ticket prices. Those tickets aren't expensive at all. On a Friday night, I know we might like our Friday night lights in high school, but we're hoping a big crowd can show up for UCLA Washington on that Friday night, 7:30. Hopefully the students can go make it the first true home game when classes are done for the week. I know they were in school maybe for that third and final home game against South Alabama, but this is one where it's during the week, even though it's on a Friday, late night, prime time. Hopefully a good showing for the crowd. Give the Bruins a chance to get some national relevancy. A win this week against a surging Husky team, excuse me, as we try not to choke here. UCLA, you win this, and then all of a sudden, they're in the top 25. There's no more docking the Bruins points for a weak non-conference because you saw what Washington did. They beat down what looks to be a maybe mediocre Michigan State team, at least for now. They've had a couple of back-to-back blowout losses on the road and at home. You don't know, but you beat a big-name opponent, especially for UCLA. You do it at home, got a crowd, and while it might be late on the East Coast, who cares? Everybody's going to wake up Saturday morning. You got college game day the next day, and they're going to be talking, oh, Bruins come to win Friday night. That'll be the talk of the town Saturday morning if UCLA can do it. That is the first test. Can the defense stand up and slow down this Washington attack? And this is where I've kind of highlighted this. I mean, you guys may disagree. Almost similar to last year's LSU test. LSU came in ranked around the same part in the rankings, 16, just about, with Coach Ed Orgeron. A little bit different though when they're coming off of fairly recently a national championship run, a very, very different program in the couple years since then. But for that LSU team, this is where UCLA was all right, ready to knock off a team. UCLA unranked at home, got some fans, got a loud Rose Bowl, right? A little bit of later Saturday on Labor Day, which was week 2 for the Bruins technically last year, and week 1 for LSU. And for the Bruins, this is a Washington team that is somewhat tested. They played Michigan State, but they haven't had to play a truly close game. And you can argue that Stanford down Michigan State, maybe overhyped in the beginning, like the Big Ten hype train, which UCLA is going to join in a couple of years. And UCLA, kind of, this seems similar to that LSU game where a chance to get the win, get the hype train going like last year, and then build into an immediate challenge against Utah next week, the following week, with an extra day to prepare or an extra day to rest, if you will, as the Bruins practice Sunday night after flying back in from Boulder, getting right to work. A win this week, national relevancy. We need the Rose Bowl to be packed, and most importantly, the test. This is a trying, true test of UCLA's defense as a whole. If they don't come to play, the Bruins could be waxed at home. And maybe it could be a shootout. We could be treated to one of those Pac-12 After Dark thrillers. High scoring affair, and the Bruins can eke out a win. But if the Bruins defense can hold Washington to that less than 44 points per game and closer to 30, then UCLA's offense, that's where UCLA's offense got to step up in their own right. But challenge one, Washington, get the win, get nationally relevant this season, get in that top 25. And that's what week one of this challenge begins in this potential ride to the Rose Bowl. We'll tell you what Utah brings, but after we talk to you about upside. For remembering, if you're cringing at the pump to getting an eye popping check at your favorite restaurant, inflation is hitting us where it all hurts. It really hurts, and that's why you can start using Upside. It's an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With every purchase, you can earn cash back thanks to Upside. All you have to do to get started is download the free Upside app, use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 cash back or more on your first purchase of $10 or more. Again, in comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. That's why Upside users are earning more than $1 million every single week. They got a high rating in the App Store, close to 5 stars, and that's why people like using it. Download the free Upside app and use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Again, $5 or more cash back when you buy something $10 or more using the promo code LOCKED. All right, so test number 2 for the Bruins. You go from, all right, kind of building, right? You build one step into the other, all leading in this 4-week stretch to a crucial road matchup to Oregon. But first, the middle of the two matchups, Utah Utes. I mentioned how the likes of Washington will bring its own test for the UCLA defense, and why this is the make or break. With the divisionless Pac-12 title game, all these wins can knock these other teams kind of down a peg, of course, get UCLA building into a potential AP top 25 ranking, get the coaches poll and all that stuff. But you hold the tiebreaker against arguably 2 of the 3 or the 4 true contenders in the Pac-12 title race if you can knock off a Washington or, say, Utah that is unbeaten in Pac-12 play, but they come in 3-1, or the Utah Utes will be at the moment. They do host Oregon State, which is a tough matchup at home for Utah in Salt Lake City at Rice-Eccles Stadium when they take on Oregon State. And for UCLA, yeah, it's always been a little bit tough against the Utes as of late, especially with stuff riding on the line. Whether, if you remember, 2014 and all those good years with Jim Moore, sometimes it was a Utah-Oregon combination that always seems to punch UCLA in the mouth or in the gut one way or the other in crushing blows. And it'll be a Utah-Oregon combination again for UCLA. The difference, though, is you get a home game, a bye, and a road game. Utah 3-1. We all saw it nationally televised week 1. Utah went to Gainesville as a top 10 ranked preseason team, led late, gave up the lead, and had a chance on the doorstep not only to tie the game, but to win the game, only to see their quarterback, Cameron Rising, throw a pick in the end zone for Florida to walk it off and win miraculously for a win at home. So far, they haven't been punished too hard for that road loss at Florida, although the Gators, a couple of unfortunate decisions on the wrong side, making that Utah loss look worse and worse, not only for the Utes, but for the Pac-12 as a whole, considering Oregon's blowout loss to start the year against Georgia, the reigning national champs, on a neutral site. So UCLA, you come into that Utah game fresh off a hopefully exciting Washington game, and regardless how it goes, Utah presents its completely other challenge. Simple, different. It's with Kyle Whittingham. They're going to come right after you. Thus far, the Utes in their first 4 games prior to their Oregon State game, they're almost 50-50 when it comes to touchdowns, running the football, throwing the football, and the same when it comes to getting first downs, passing the football, and running the football. I've noticed they have 11 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns. You go to their first downs as a whole, 49 first downs rushing compared to 48 first downs passing. They rush kind of like UCLA. They go to the ground, or they like to go to the ground. 213 yards per game on the ground thus far for the Utes. And the opponents I've seen thus far, you could point to them playing Southern Utah and other sides, but they've held opponents to about 111 yards per game on the ground rushing the football. So almost 100 more yards on the ground running the football. That means more possession, more time with the football, and they control the clock time of game. This will certainly, for UCLA, test their physicality. Almost what a similar like Stanford matchup would be. This is what Utah is filling the void of what Stanford's kind of maybe fallen out of at the moment, but in terms of being a top 10 team, they're filling that Stanford void of that physical kind of really tough blue collar kid and fighting away to be physical, battle, tenacious, and they'll just run it down your throat if they can. And they got a guy who can throw the football if you leave him wide open in Cameron Rising. And this will be a game UCLA at home, the extra day to prepare or rest, most importantly, coming out that Friday night against Washington, where they're going to sling it all around the field. Utah's going to come in, show something completely different. And it's one of those games where UCLA at home, recent years, especially with Utah building in their now decade plus in the Pac 12, where it's not always been an easy chore for the Bruins to beat the Utes as conference rivals. They should, hopefully at home, hold serve against a strong Utah team. UCLA should be in this game at home, but it's going to test their physicality. UCLA has limited depth on the interior defensive line. Some can argue that the offensive line hasn't been as spectacular as one would have hoped, despite the likes of Charbonnet being spectacular and the athleticism of, say, Dorian Thompson-Robinson for UCLA, reading the defense and sprinting out. It'll be a true test of both the offensive line and the D line. Can they hang with the likes of Utah? Can the defense step up, stop the run, and play the pass and not get burnt, whether it be a play action or a read option pass? Whatever it is, UCLA is going to be tested physically. And it's helpful that UCLA does get the extra day to breathe and then build into a regular week at home against Utah, which will be a middle of the day affair, mid-afternoon or early afternoon, I should say, 12:30 at the Rose Bowl, and again, nationally televised. And the difference is you come off a win against Washington, it's either all the hype or a crushing loss against Washington, and then UCLA down on their luck. They need this win against Utah. They would need a win to truly save their season. The difference this Utah game will bring is if UCLA beats Washington, they can be allowed one hiccup, but just know that Utah won't lose many games down the stretch. Or you you lose to Washington, and this Utah-Oregon combo is truly a remarkably tough stretch to go to try and win back-to-back games just to get back in the Pac-12 title game race. UCLA, again, 4-0 against the 4-0 Washington this week, and then probably what could be a 4-1 Utah team, but they are playing Oregon State at home, so it's very possible Utah could be upset by Oregon State and be in 3-2 and expose some weaknesses. Who knows? It goes from the defense challenge first. The true physicality for the UCLA football team will be tested before they head into their bye week, which will be much needed. Then UCLA moves on after the bye week to take on an Oregon team who you don't know where to pin them, right? You watched Oregon start the season off getting absolutely smacked by Georgia, which some may have thought, some may not have thought is dominant, where they lost 49-3. Since the Ducks, now top 13, top 15, depending on the poll you use, they have won 3 in a row, including a big win over a ranked and scrappy BYU team who knocked off Baylor earlier this year in an exciting affair. And then they won a very tough game to Oregon against Wazoo. And the most important thing for UCLA is they have the bye, and then they go to Oregon October 22nd. It is fairly important to note that this is UCLA. That's only their second road game, their first true road test of the season, and quite frankly, it might be their only road test of the season. Yes, Arizona State will bring their own fight with their new head coach, or their interim head coach, I should say. And then Cal in a short week is no easy chore. Those are the only 4 road games for the Bruins this year. And it's the Oregon one that's circled October 22nd, which already brings itself so much just because of Chip Kelly being UCLA's head coach, right? But then you're battling in the race for the Pac 12. You talk about how both teams will be coming off buys. Oregon coming into that UCLA Oregon game will come off a home game against Stanford, which, for all intents and purposes, I would think Oregon should hold serve and win that one. And then they go to Arizona, which I believe Oregon should also hold serve. The Ducks could very well be a top 10 team at that point, depending on how things shake out, and be 5-1. And UCLA, could be dream-like scenario, yes, 6-0. Dream-like, maybe another dream-like scenario. You could be 5-1. At worst, they're 4-2 heading into a game at Oregon, where in Eugene at Autzen, UCLA has not beaten the Ducks since 2004, since they won 34-26. Over the last decade, this is a matchup that's been dominated by Oregon. 9-1 are the Ducks against the Bruins in their last 10 matchups. And yes, that may include a Pac 12 title game or two, but still, UCLA has not fared well against the Ducks. It's the road game, and it's the one of these games in the stretch where UCLA probably needs to win this Oregon game if they want to keep in the race for the Pac 12. And my challenge here for UCLA is their challenge will be the moxie. How will they be able to make adjustments coming out of the bye week? What's their depth like? So the three things for the Oregon game is how can they handle themselves in a true crazy road environment? Their moxie in a place where they almost could and should have won against Oregon 2 years ago in 2020. But again, like the whole season, too many close losses. How can they make the adjustments coming off the bye week against the team also coming off their bye week? And this will test their depth because you play short week against Washington, you'll get banged up. Then you go play a physical Utah team, get smacked some more. And if you're not ready and healthy from your bye week after a Utah game going on the road to Oregon, and your depth is tested, which it's already been with the D line and stuff. And who knows what Charbonnet's looked like? He's had not as many carries as some may have liked, but he might get that pitch count raised a little bit more. UCLA will try and test themselves against an Oregon team, which they're playing for their season despite their early season blowout. They've turned things around with Dan Lanning and they want to make it to the Rose Bowl, make a Pac-12 title run, and beat everybody in their sight. UCLA wanting to change things and work their way into the kind of the back half of their schedule where things arguably lighten up. After the Oregon game for UCLA, you do get a home game against Stanford and at ASU. Two games where UCLA could very well stumble. And then Arizona at home before the one everybody circled on November 19th against the Trojans. UCLA, this is the gauntlet. These next 4 weeks, from September 30th to October 22nd, we'll truly know how this whole season's going to ride out. For the most part, we've seen UCLA go through gauntlets in the past, only to fall to an ASU on the road or stumble to a very physical Stanford team at home and just find themselves scratching their head saying, hey, we got through three of the toughest teams in the conference and then they found themselves in the wrong end. But these are the three games that will truly make or break UCLA's season. Going to the Rose Bowl, they've set their lofty expectations. This is a veteran team that's technically played in Eugene, a little different atmosphere in COVID, though. They're playing Utah. They know what it's like to play Utah. They at least the big leaders like the DTRs and Charbonnet and all those things. And then you get Washington, who is the newly re-energized program in this Pac-12, kind of surging forward, if you will, unbeaten for now. And can UCLA knock them off? And all UCLA needs to do to keep this season successful going into the back half is go 2-1. Go 2-1 in this stretch, and I think every UCLA fan will be happy. Go 1-2, depending on how it goes. You could be very disappointed as a UCLA fan. We could all be disappointed, right? But it's going to test their defense. And can we show up as UCLA fans Friday night? Then you got the Utah game. Again, maybe another test. Can the fans show up? But most importantly, the physicality against Utah. And then how truly ready for the moment are they against Oregon, who could very well be a top 10 team playing at home in an Autzen crowd that hasn't seen the Ducks play at home in almost 3 weeks. All important key notes. Can UCLA handle the moxie and the adversity, the physicality of a Utah, and then a team that's going to run and throw and go crazy all over the board. Washington. Can UCLA handle all those things? That's the story. UCLA season in a nutshell, the next 4 weeks, 3 games. We will find out how DTR, how UCLA's team as a whole, Bill McGovern, can the D coordinator game plan? Can the second half wizardry, can the conditioning come into play and continue to rise against these opponents in these next few games? It's going to make or break whether UCLA makes the Rose Bowl. No predictions yet, but they must go 2-1 at the minimum, at the worst, to stay in the race. 1-2, I'm not sure we'll cut it. I could be wrong. There's been worse number 2 seeds in Pac-12 championship games before, even though they have restructured it to the 2 best in the conference based on winning percentage, which means UCLA must at least go 2-1 in this stretch. And I've laid out the challenges. Tell me what you guys think at home, whether you're listening or you're simply commenting, watching on YouTube. Just tell me what you think, because this is a gauntlet coming up in Pac-12 to play, which, as we're wrapping up Locked On UCLA, go make Locked On Pac-12 your second listen today with Spencer McLaughlin. Well, I'll be a guest on that one pretty soon again. We'll talk about UCLA Washington coming up. But that's going to wrap it up for Locked On UCLA. Next few games, it's going to make or break UCLA's Rose Bowl hopes and potentially even something greater. And Chip Kelly's tenure can all be defined by these next few games. In the meantime, Bruin fans, get those hands in the air, a clap, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA, fight, fights! This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins!